And what's up, GC Live Monday episode of the show. I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. Welcome in. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Hope everybody is getting fired up, Chris, for what is going to be a jam-packed month of June in Gamecock Nation. Maybe some South Carolina baseball postseason play. And of course, we know for a fact I think it's going to be every single day, Chris. There will be something to do with South Carolina recruiting on the University of South Carolina campus, and I guarantee there will be on GamecockCentral.com as well. Hope everybody is doing well today. This is GC Live presented by Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network, ClintHammond.com. You see it right there above my head. 803-771-6933 is how you can get in touch with Clint. Clint is not only our presenting sponsor of the show, but he is the branch manager of the Columbia Mortgage Network in MLS number 71597. See Hammond at mortgagenetwork.com. As always, we appreciate Clint, good friend of the show, and helps support the show financially as well. So we appreciate him. Again, hope you all had a great weekend. Chris, this is the final countdown, man. I'm getting my vacation in starting tomorrow. I'm getting out of Dodge, and then
I forgot that was tomorrow.
Yeah,
a reminder would have been nice. You gave one several times.
I gave one like the end of last week, I feel like.
But see, I operate day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. You didn't give me one when we just talked on the phone about half an hour ago. And
so I thought you knew, man. But so I'm getting out of here, and but then starting next week, we'll be living at the indoor facility for a little while. Have those early trips and long days over there, but it'll be fun, man. I'm actually, honestly, I may regret saying this after about Camp 8, probably, but I'm looking forward to being back out there.
Yeah, me too. You know, the thing you mentioned living at the facility, that probably wouldn't be bad because it is pretty nice in there. I would be very excited about the food. Maybe we could go meet up with Kristen Coggin or the players. Since a lot of the players apparently know how to cook, they kind of teach them how to cook. Maybe they could cook us up something nice, some steak, some rice, salmon. They have a lot of good looking stuff there. Maybe we could go into the float tank, take a little nap. That'd be nice. But no, seriously, I am excited about it, man. I mean, it's, we did get to go to, Rivals Camp in Atlanta this spring, which was kind of nice, to go out there and see some live sort of camp action. We missed it all last season. We talk about it pretty often. All the camps, we covered a lot of camps under Steve Spurrier, all the Will Muschamp camps. I think one of us or both of us has covered every single one of those. And to not have it last year is kind of weird. And it's obviously a good time to sort of put eyes on a lot of guys and scout them. We've been missing that for a while. So that'll be cool. Like you said, every day there's going to be some kind of activity, whether it's a camp going on, whether it's tracking some unofficial visitors, tracking official visitors on several weekends and even some midweek ones. So it ought to be a pretty good time this summer, with the return to normalcy there.
Yeah, and so before we even get to that point, Chris, the other part of this is that South Carolina's current players will be getting back to campus. And also several of their newcomers will be getting back to campus or getting to campus sometimes actually, strangely, maybe literally for the first time. I mean, obviously every year your newcomers get there for the first time officially as Gamecocks to move in, to make it their residence. But because of the weirdness of the last 15 months or so, some of these guys may actually be stepping on campus for the first time all time, which is just weird to say. So, Chris, I did the math. It's not like we're doing calculus here, but I counted up who is left, basically. And this was posted on Gamecock Central, I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago or so, when we started sort of tracking who was getting in when. And basically, if you start to look at South Carolina's incoming class, that would be high school signees, junior college signees, or incoming transfers that we already know are locked in with South Carolina. At the end of the spring, there's basically 10 guys left, 10 guys that are going to be a part of South Carolina's 2021 football season that were not yet on campus. Now, South Carolina will start their summer. I believe there's so many summer sessions now. When I was there, it was Maymester, summer 1, summer 2. Now you have, I think you still have Maymester, but there's one that starts in May that is like a full summer session. There's one that starts in June that's like a 6-week session. The full one is like a 9-week session, I guess. Then there's another one that starts like June 21st, I think. So by the time the June 21st one hits, among those 10, I believe from what I've been told, all 10 will be on campus unless there's some late little just snag with a transcript, which you sometimes see. Obviously, we've seen that in the past. But a lot of these guys, Chris, will be getting on campus like today, tomorrow, Wednesday, getting in this week, and they'll be starting with the June 1 day. So going down, because it's a short list, I'm going to go ahead and go down through them. You have 2 transfers. Carlin Splittell, actually talked to him a couple of weeks ago. He said he'll be in basically like he may already be there tomorrow. He'll be in this week. Tyrese Ross, he just found out he'll actually be on campus June 7th. So we were wondering with him counting forward, how, when will he actually be able to get to Columbia? He said he'll be in town June 7th. So that's your 2 transfers. Then as far as JUCO kids, you have Bam Scott. Then the rest is high school guys. So Omega Blake, Ladarian Craig, Colby Fields, Isaiah Norris, TJ Sanders, Juju McDowell, and John Darius Morgan. So that's the final guys that will be enrolling at South Carolina. They'll be getting the one guy I haven't been able to lock down actually when he'll be in would be Isaiah Norris, the JUCO kid, obviously. And I think I said Bam Scott is the only JUCO kid. Isaiah Norris, obviously a JUCO kid as well. So don't know exactly when he'll be in. I know TJ Sanders is going to be in with the June 21st group. Most of those guys are going to be in with this first group that's coming in. So I thought maybe we'd dive in a little bit, Chris, of that group. What is the realistic expectation for impacting the 2021 season? We spent a lot of the spring talking about the guys that were newcomers that were already here. So, again, a couple of DBs that are transfers, Carlin Splittell, Tyrese Ross, then high school and JUCO guys, linebacker Bam Scott, receiver Omega Blake, DB Ladarian Craig, linebacker Colby Fields, DB Isaiah Norris, defensive lineman TJ Sanders, running back Caleb McDowell, offensive lineman John Darius Morgan. So let's go ahead and let's circle one guy, Chris, of the bunch. Who is your, if I'm putting percentages on it, that guy is 95%, the highest percentage that they're going to make an impact for South Carolina this season?
Man, it's tough to narrow it down to one. I'll say this.
That's why I'm asking.
I'm going to take this opportunity to maybe sort of talk myself into a guy or two, or one guy, but to sort of narrow it down, so one guy that came to mind right off the bat was Juju McDowell, right? Because, and you look and you say, well, that's a stupid pick, Chris. The one position South Carolina's pretty good at seems to be running back. If you sort of pick one on the team that could be maybe even a strength, that's probably one you'd pick, right? But Pete Limbo's already said, hey, we want to get a good look at Juju McDowell in the return game, which he excelled at in high school. So that's a possibility. That came to mind. But for me, Wes, I think it's probably even smarter to pick a DB, just because that is a position on this team that is really razor thin. Mitch is right. I definitely could get a haircut. I forgot about the barber shop, but that would definitely be good. I think looking at DBs, that probably makes the most sense, right? So Ladarian Craig, he's a guy that we know about, but there's kind of a little bit of like mystery, intrigue around him, just because he was a guy that was sort of late bloomer in recruiting out of Alabama. And it was a frantic time, obviously, when Shane Beamer and his staff came in. So it He was a late bloomer overall with some offers and things like that. He was a late acquisition for South Carolina. You see him on film and all those types of things. You see that he can run. He's got size. And he is a high school guy, so maybe he's not as ready as maybe a junior college transfer, but he's one I think you circle. And, the other one came to mind whenever he does enroll is Isaiah Norris, because I think I've heard a lot of good things there, and he's a junior college guy, and obviously corner's a big need. So, I know I still didn't answer the question. I don't know, man. Where are you at on that? You might have to pick one, and then I'd sort of pick one too. I don't know that I can pick just one right now.
Well, I mean, as we went, I was almost going to sort of rank them, like not even as ability or talent, but more most likely to, maybe the top 5 most likely guys as we sort of talk through it. So, man, I think you first and foremost, you clearly have to me, you got to start with the transfers. Yeah. And, I think Carlin Splatell or Tyrese Ross, or I should say both Carlin Splatell and Tyrese Ross are going to have every opportunity to step in and help this team. I was actually, like I said, I talked to Patel a little bit just catching up a couple weeks ago about where his head was at on which actual position he's going to play. And he said he still was not sure. It's kind of one of those things, get you in, see how it looks, see where you fit. But he actually, it sounded like he has the playbook or has been looking at something similar to the playbook and has spent a lot of time trying to get the nickelback position down. And, he even went as far as to tell me, the nickelback spot. And this makes sense, Chris, because we know South Carolina is going to be in the 4-2-5 quite a bit. And we know that position is going to be important. He's like, there's kind of a lot to it. There's a lot of responsibility to this nickelback spot. And one, we've already seen a transfer come in David Spalding, who, if you want to make a depth chart just based on what we saw in the spring game of current players, Spalding was first guy out there. I tend to think at cornerback, 2 out of the 3 of Cam Smith, Dom Hill, and Marcellus Dial will be your starting cornerbacks. And probably Cam Smith, you would imagine, if healthy, is definitely one of them. So Dom and then, Marcellus starts at the other cornerback spot. I think Carlin Splatell fighting with Spalding at the nickel spot, is one to watch. So my question, if I'm going to answer who is most likely, does Splatell have a better chance of winning the nickel spot than Tyrese Ross does of winning a safety spot over, what are you talking about there? An RJ Roderick, Jalen Dickerson, some of the other younger guy, and a Donald Fortune who, played quite a bit in the spring. Hard to say of the two. I would probably lean to Splatell just because the fact that, yes, it was at a smaller level, but he's essentially played an entire career and played a bunch. Yes. So there's going to be a step up, with Ross, still a younger guy comparatively. We'll be learning, obviously. Both guys are going to have an adjustment. I would probably put Splatell 1, Ross 2, as far as impact goes. Then your question for me becomes who of the JUCO and high school guys is most likely to make an impact. And I think, you could look at the 2 JUCO guys, Bam Scott, Isaiah Norris. It's so hard to say there because, Chris, we've been doing this long enough. We've seen JUCO guys come in and they just get it. We've seen JUCO guys come in. There's an adjustment period, and then it all clicks and they're good to go. So they're sort of in the next category for me. But then, like you said, with the Ladarian Craig, it's such an unknown. That's one of those guys for me where Wouldn't shock me if he comes in, red shirts, and we don't hear much about him for a year. Also, wouldn't shock me at all if this guy comes in and they're like, man, we got to steal with this kid. He's got to play. So I think then past that, you look at Juju McDowell, you look at Colby Fields, the freshman linebacker coming in, has the right mindset. And then I go back to special teams. You mentioned Juju McDowell. Colby Fields is a prime candidate to help South Carolina on special teams. Juju McDowell is a prime candidate to be a return guy for South Carolina. When I look at Marcus Satterfield and what I think they're going to have to do on offense, it's going to be to me, it might even get to the point, in basketball these days, there's like not even positions anymore. Like you're just like, let's get some dudes out there. Let's get our best athletes out there. If I'm South Carolina, McDowell may just be too electric not to find a way to get him out there, even if you just throw him in the slot sometimes. And I'm skating around the question as well, but that's sort of how I'm putting these guys in my head as far as ordering them. John Darius Morgan as an offensive lineman, you would think it's going to be, and that's a guy they were very high on, at least especially the previous staff. It's going to be a tall climb because they feel good on the line and you're an offensive lineman. Very rarely do these kids come in and play right off the bat. TJ Sanders, Chris and I love TJ Sanders as a prospect. We've talked him up for a long time. Defensive line, probably would either TJ Sanders is just an absolute freak show stud, or there's been a lot of injuries if TJ is having to make an immediate impact on this team. I think you really like TJ's long-term potential on this team. And then the other guy that I would say is probably a wild card, is Omega Blake. Talented kid who have the chance to actually dive in, it seems, on one position, played a bunch of different spots in high school. But there's a lot of bodies at receiver. So that's a question mark as a position, but there's a ton of dudes at receiver. Probably a little bit harder there. So then I think my question, Chris, I'm going to throw it back to you. Now that I've talked all of that out, would you give somebody an edge in that mix of high school and JUCO guys? Do you lean Isaiah Norris? Bam Scott, this dude will knock the crap out of you. So if he picks up this scheme, we could be talking about that guy. But God, it seems like JUCO linebackers just can sort of go either way in my experience.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. And speaking of great point, Derek Frazier, Wes, in the comments, former Gamecock. I was a Gamecock JC transfer. It's all on if the kid catches on to the system. And it's a great point. I think that's the case for high schoolers. And Derek, thanks for joining the show as well. It's a great point, and it applies really to everyone. But I think a lot of times when people look at junior college transfers, they expect a little bit more. And sometimes that's fair, because a lot of times when you take a junior college guy, you're doing it to maybe plug a hole. Sometimes the kid's just really too talented to turn down, and you want to take him anyway. But sometimes it's because you need a guy with a little bit more experience. But sometimes those guys are enrolling in the summer, like we're seeing now. And then the need is there, but they're not quite ready, making the transition. So that is what it's all about. So for someone like Bam Scott, is he more advanced physically than a high school kid? Yes. But it is about a little bit more than that as to whether or not he's ready to play this year. So when you look at a lot of the guys we talked about, Wes, the guys that we talked about sort of in the top upper echelon of those rankings were guys that fill needs for South Carolina. And big needs are defensive back, of course. Linebacker is a position where we've talked about the depth there. There's some questions with depth. There's some questions with playmaking. And so that's why you sort of put a Colby Fields up there, even though he's a high schooler. Maybe there's an opening for him to step in and play. Bam Scott as a JUCO guy. Again, the talent's there. You look at the tape, you like the tape, but you're sort of projecting, how is he going to pick it up? We just don't know yet. We don't know enough about that. And then with Juju McDowell, the return game is an area where it doesn't look like they have that quite settled. They have some options, but it's not like they return, an all-American punt and kick returner where it's just obvious who it's going to be. That's not there. With Morgan on the O-line, again, young kid, got some returning O linemen back that you feel good about. Same thing with interior D line with a TJ Sanders, where again, unless he just blows you away or there's injuries or a need, he might be a little bit farther away. So you really go with need first of all, and then you also look at the talent. Unless the kid's just so good that he's going to supplant some guys that are already on the roster, we're not going to see quite as much of that this year. It's going to be more about plugging holes. So as you talked through it, that actually helped a good bit. Again, we don't know whether it's a high school guy, a JUCO guy, a transfer guy. How are they going to integrate into the system? We're still learning about some of these guys. The coaches are going to still be learning about some of these guys as soon as they get on campus. And then I think we'll start to hear more and be able to pass more on about how they're integrating and have a much better sense of being able to rank these. Our rankings before the opener are probably going to be different than they are now, or at least they'll be much better informed than they are now. So I think I've always been high on Isaiah Norris as a corner. So depending on when he gets in, depending on how he can pick things up, he would be pretty high for me, even at corner. I'm kind of with you on Platel and nickel. He might be the number one guy. I think behind that, it gets a little dicey. So Bam Scott, if he can pick things up, he might even be like number 2 on that list just because of some of those questions. But I would have to go Platel because nickel, that was the one during the spring where you remember even in public settings where, you're going to tend to get not canned answers. I think this staff's been really good at not giving canned answers, but even in public settings, it's sort of like who's working at nickel. And a lot of times you got, a lot of different guys, and so that sort of told you that, with some of the injuries that they had, little minor things and trying to figure it out, they're shuffling a lot of guys in and out of there, or they didn't have a lot of guys available depending on the time. So I think there's definitely an opening for him to come in. But even for him, big adjustment coming from assumption to playing in the SEC.
Yeah, and I like the film there. I think, this may be, and I kind of hate the fact that I don't want all of our answers to be like, hey, we don't know. Hey, we don't know. We try to be experts in our field as far as following the team and giving you an idea of what's most likely to happen. The great thing about sports is it's all unpredictable, but maybe we give you a little bit better than a coin flip at least. But I would dare say, because of how everything has played out, the strangeness of this offseason, I think I probably know as little as I ever have about the incoming guys and who I'm really thinking is going to be a stud and who is not. And I'll be curious to see, Chris. There's always that guy or two, and most of the class is already on campus, but there's always that guy or two, I should say, that just comes in, and after about a week of strength and conditioning, we start to hear, hey, watch out for this guy. He's an absolute get. Like, this was a hit. This was a guy that maybe wasn't as highly recruited, but we nailed this one. So I'll be curious to see who's the dude, of this 10 that they're like, dang, this was a great get for us, and was sort of, it was kind of, as soon as those guys got on campus, you and I kept hearing, hey, this EJ Jenkins dude, he's a freak athlete. Like, we'll see how he fits in. We'll see how he picks it up. We'll see where he plays, but he's a freak athlete. I'll be curious to see among this group, is it a Ladarian Craig? Is he, he had some good measurables in high school. Colby Fields is a guy, the training he's done with a bunch of guys at, there in New Orleans. And, I talked to his trainer before. Colby is right up there with some of the testing they do with anybody else that they have coming through his facility. So I think OBX is the name of that training facility. So, Colby Fields could be a guy that comes in before they even step on the field, and they're like, man, athletically, this kid is exactly what we're looking for, at South Carolina. So I'll be interested. That's always fun for me. That's one of the best parts of it, is when we start hearing, hey, watch out for this dude, watch out for that dude. They got a chance to help this team.
It is. And, mentioning Fields, I think you think about it a couple ways. You look at the difference it's a different question and answer when you're talking about, okay, who's going to come in and be poised to position to maybe make the quickest impact, most substantial impact in year one versus who ends up being the best player out of this crop. That's often a very different answer. It can sometimes be the same answer. You look back at some of the past recruiting classes and guys that came along. Sometimes it took guys a little bit longer, but then they ended up making a bigger impact. Devin Taylor, for instance, he redshirted year one. Then after that, he actually made a pretty big impact in his first game, and then he ended up being a really good player, an NFL player. Melvin Ingram, he was just sort of like he was a guy that people were really excited about in recruiting. For a lot of reasons, didn't make that impact. Then he switches around his position. He buys into playing, defensive end and rushing. I talked about that with Dennis Thomas a lot in the interview with him the other day. Former grad assistant that helped out Brad Lawing, helped develop Melvin Ingram. He took a little bit longer. Once he figured it out, first round pick. So it takes a little bit longer with some guys. But the point is, Colby Fields, he's a guy that, I don't know if it'll be year one. He's going to have a chance. I think he's up there in that ranking for me. He's up in that upper echelon. But I think he might have a chance to be one of the best players in this class before he leaves. I think he's got that kind of ability, that kind of mindset to where even if it's not as immediate or even if he doesn't do a ton this season as he continues getting acclimated, he's got a chance to be really good. Hey, Wes, I had a side note real quick too. Derek Frazier joined the show, and I hope he's still around. If you are, Derek, weigh in. Looking around, doing a little quick research. So Derek Frazier, and this is the only Derek Frazier I found at South Carolina, our friend at Gamecock Archives, John Parker, he does an awesome job. Derek Frazier helped South Carolina in 1988, beat Virginia Tech, coached by none other than Frank Beamer, in 1988 with a 26-24 win. And here's lots of names in this, Wes. Todd Ellis, who was concussed in the game but kept playing, is what it said. That would not happen nowadays.
You can definitely not do that these days.
You will not be doing that. So Todd Ellis gets a mention here. Mike Dingle. All right. The Gamecock defense was ranked 8th in the country at the time and averaged giving up 5.8 points a game. Also would never happen nowadays. If you gave up 5.8 points a game on average, you would be number one by like 25 points a game. So that's not happening. Robert Brooks returned the opening kickoff of the second half, 98 yards for a touchdown. All right, so here's where Derek Frazier comes in. Derek Frazier blocked a punt by Virginia Tech, so Beamer ball in reverse there. Derek Frazier blocks a punt for the Gamecocks, recovered by Tim High, and Colin Mackey made a 23-yard field goal to put Carolina up 26-24 with 6:43 left. And then the Gamecock defense forced a punt and back-to-back interceptions, ended up winning that game. So Derek Frazier, junior college transfer, as he said, ended up making a big impact, and a really, really cool to look back on that against Virginia Tech.
Derek Frazier also is just a great football name.
It's awesome.
I can't really tell you why, but that screams. What position did Derek play?
He was a defensive tackle.
Okay, cool. For some reason, that sounded like a linebacker name. I don't know, maybe just because we were talking about linebackers.
I agree.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, by the way, Derek. Maybe we'll get Derek on the show at some point. We need to do a little bit of that, man. Have some former players come on and tell their stories. But yeah, cool stuff there, dude. And obviously, like Derek said, it's a great point. It's all about how quickly these kids come in and pick it up is how quickly you can make an impact. But we've seen it time and time again with a JUCO guy where it's not immediate and there are very high expectations on these kids. But then you can almost see, even Javon Kinlaw. I remember by the end of Javon's first year at South Carolina, it really started to click. And then, his next year is when it really got rolling. Then his third year, he was outstanding. But I think it was sort of the end. We were like, man, this guy's starting to push people around and just realize. And that was always the thing with Javon. We tried, if I remember correctly, not to overhype Javon. That, hey, this is a kid with immense upside, but that is still learning the position. And I think for me, if you're the old South Carolina staff, Javon Kinlaw is one of your success stories that you want to put on a poster somewhere if you're recruiting somewhere in the future, because this kid was outstanding in his time at South Carolina. But that's the guy that comes to my mind as far as junior college kid comes in. It doesn't just instantly click, but as he gets some playing time, as he gets comfortable in the system, really takes off from there.
Yeah, he did. And man, I mean, the Javon Kinlaw story is, I mean, I've talked about it a lot before, but it's crazy how that happened because, I saw the kid when he was 15 years old and in high school. I think he just moved to Goose Creek from Friendship Academy in D.C. I saw him at this. It wasn't even a camp. It was a combine. And he was 6'5", 270 or somewhere around there. And, so you look at him, and even at that point, he looked like, wow, this kid's, from a frame and athleticism standpoint, got a chance. But he was incredibly raw, even at just combine drills, lifting and running and things like that. He'd just never done that stuff before. And, I thought that his highest upside may have been as an offensive tackle. A lot of schools thought that might have been his highest upside. But to his credit, man, he really thought himself as a D lineman. South Carolina's former staff put him on a plane, got him to Jones Community College in Mississippi. He blew up out there. Alabama, Southern Cal, a bunch of schools wanted him. Goes to South Carolina, works hard. Like you said, man, a great development story there. This was a kid that, completely transformed his body. You remember when he enrolled at South Carolina, he was way up in the 300-pound mark, completely transformed his body to where he was just a physical freak. And he always had some natural, just genetically predisposed to being able to do that. But he worked extremely hard, and they put him on a good plan and turns into a first-round pick. But a great success story there. And that's something that when Javon Kinlaw was in high school, if you would have said, hey, man, if in 4 years Javon Kinlaw is going to be an NFL guy, I would have said, okay, I can buy that if he develops. But what he turned into was kind of hard to envision for me. And that may be more on me than anything else, but it just goes to show you that you don't always see these things coming. They happen at different paces. Different kids develop at different rates, even if they're more advanced from junior college or in high school. It just depends. It's hard to project those things sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So obviously we'll see. We'll have more on those 10 guys, and I'd imagine as they arrive, South Carolina will put out their little videos of them saying what's up, welcome home, all that stuff. Glad to be here. I would be if you like stuff like that, I would be looking out for that on Twitter, probably at some point this week, heading into June 1 with classes starting. That's next Tuesday is when classes start. So that's probably it as far as football right now, Chris. But we'll, of course, leading into that start, we'll have a ton of recruiting stuff really throughout the entire month of June and moving forward after that. But baseball, really, dude, tough series loss for South Carolina. But I'll say this, and this is not like a moral victory, because obviously if you're South Carolina and you're South Carolina baseball, you never want to be at the point of claiming moral victories. This is a program that wins matter and losses matter. But 16-14 overall in the SEC play, 33-20 overall record against the strength of schedule right now is second in the country. You really, I think, had a good showing for yourself this season. That's a season for South Carolina to be proud of. But, man, the game Saturday, game 3, was right there for the taking for South Carolina in what could have been a historic come from behind. Oh, maybe historic is too strong, but it would have been one of those games that people remember for a long time because South Carolina was down 5-1 early, battles back. Tying run is on second base in both the 8th and ninth inning. Momentum in Carolina's dugout, and would have put you at 17-13 in SEC play, and would have actually given you an even better matchup. That I believe would have pushed South Carolina to being the 6th seed in the SEC tournament, and Hoover starting tomorrow. A little bit better matchup there. Another key win, a series win over a top 10 RPI team. That maybe puts South Carolina over the hump to host.
Yeah.
So, again, this team has shown heart all year long. Half the team has been playing banged up, it seems like. If anybody heard the injury report before the game on the radio, half the team is banged up. So, I think Gutsy Day could have been a special day if they could have come from behind and finished the comeback.
Yeah, I mean, Braylon Wimmer's out there, not able to move around too well, and that's one of his greatest strengths is his speed and his ability to move around. And so Heinrich was up, right? You go and you get a 3 spot in the 8th, and it could have done even more there, but you're happy with a 3 spot. Jeff Heinrich gets down. What was he? 1-2, 2-2, something like that. He's fouled off some pitches, and then he hits a double. And at that point, you're just – I'll speak for myself. I was convinced at that point when Jeff Heinrich's out there battling and he hits a double, you're like, it's happening. They're at least tying this game. They may go to extras and lose. They're going to tie this game. And you have up some hitters that you feel good about, and it just doesn't happen for them. But you're right. I mean, hey, that's a good team. That's a series that, hey, man, maybe if you play that series, 10 times, it may be a split. But at the end of the day, it's a disappointing result for South Carolina. Call it like it is because of what was on the line, Wes. I mean, that right there, the one game, because this schedule has been so difficult because of how competitive those host sites are, that one game, whether you call it, I mean, you could call the other loss of the series the one game too, but they were so close in this one. That could end up being the difference in hosting, not hosting, the seeding, like you said. But that's where it's at. It's uber competitive. Like you said, banged up. Even in games they have not won this year, they've battled back. So I think you like the mental makeup of this team. And we're going to see, what they can do in postseason play, because it's not like they miss out on postseason play, right, by losing that game. This is a team that, like you said, has still put together a very good resume, especially given the competition. And we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, they'll be a 1 or 2 seed. They're going to be right on the line. Like however you break it down, Colin Taylor has something on Gamecock Central right now. If you're a subscriber, go check it out, where you can see the different resumes. And essentially, if you're looking at the 16 spots, there's like probably 8 teams battling for 4 spots, essentially. But if you get deeper than that, there's probably 2 teams of those 8 that are like probably not actual factors. And so it's more like 6 teams for 4 spots or 6 teams for 3 spots, depending on who you think is an absolute lock to get it. So, and it's not, as we've talked about, Chris, it's not in a vacuum. But so you're gonna need to help yourself if you're South Carolina, and you're going to potentially need for some other teams to help you as well. Now, the good thing is you already know who the 20 sites are that the 16 can come from. So if you look, man, Pittsburgh, they're 16-17 in conference and 22-19 overall, and they have a 48 RPI. So they're out. You can go ahead and knock them out. So now you have 19 teams for 16 spots. So, then I think you look right above them, Southern Miss. They have a 35-17 record. Obviously not playing near as good a teams as South Carolina has. The number 25 RPI, is Southern Miss in a vacuum a better team than South Carolina? Probably not. But you do start to deal with, okay, how many SEC teams will they take?
Right.
And the other thing with winning, if South Carolina, and I hate to go back to like the if game, but if South Carolina wins that game Saturday, then they have the same SEC record as Florida, and they swept Florida, and they get a boost in the RPI. From what I've read, Florida will probably host. That probably flips.
Yeah.
If they win there and South Carolina's a host there. But so if I'm South Carolina, you want the teams that you've beaten to play well because it helps your RPI, but also I think you want Florida to go ahead and just lose because they're in the single limb start to the tournament as well. Florida just lose. South Carolina plays Alabama approximately 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, SEC Network. If they win that, they face Tennessee. So really an opportunity there to, Alabama's 36th in RPI. That's probably not going to move the needle a ton. But if you win that one, then beat Tennessee, that will move the needle. That's a neutral site win over a top 10 RPI team, evens up the overall record against Tennessee for this year. Depending on what the other teams do, I tend to think you maybe got a shot at that point of being a host. But we'll see. I'm not a baseball expert by any means, but to me, they're so close on the line. If you add in 2 more SEC dubs and one of them being against Tennessee, Chris, you gotta reward a team for playing the second hardest schedule in the country.
You would think. So you as the unofficial czar of regional hosts, you just eliminated Pittsburgh, and who was the other one?
I'm going to officially eliminate. Like Pittsburgh has no chance.
Okay.
Southern Miss,
they're in there.
It's like
so. Who do we view at this point as, again, lots? I mean, there are a lot of things left that could happen, but I think you mentioned 2 important things. Number one, South Carolina is going to be very close on the cut line. Let's say they do overtake Pittsburgh, which they should, regardless, probably, and they overtake Southern Miss. So then you got a couple things, couple other schools in the mix that you got to beat out, right, for that spot. And then you also have the fact of, are they going to look at it for some reason, which they could, and go, well, we can't take too many SEC teams. I mean, I don't like that argument, no matter what conference. I'm not sitting here being a stand for the SEC and saying that. If the ACC or whatever conference, if they have 10 of the best 16 teams in the country, give them 10 spots. That's how I view it. But I guess the 2 key questions are, who does South Carolina need to overtake in general, just for a couple of the last slots? And then in conference, who are the ones that they have to overtake? And it's like you said, Florida is arguably one of those teams, right, where if they beat Tennessee, they could have flip-flopped, but can they flip-flop with them even as things stand?
Yeah, and can you hear me right now, Chris?
I got you.
Okay, I'm in full screen here. I was worried I might have muted myself and not able to unmute myself and stay in full screen. But hopefully, can y'all see? Hopefully, y'all are able to see this table right here. But South Carolina, right there at the top. So you see conference record, RPI, SOS, strength of schedule, obviously. Then quad 1 plus 2 victories is that next column. So, man, I start to think, for example, South Carolina has, yes, Gonzaga is 19-5 in their conference, but they have 32 wins against a much easier schedule than South Carolina that has 33 total wins. South Carolina 16-14 in conference play against, again, the second hardest schedule in the country. You tell me that Gonzaga has done more than South Carolina?
Yeah, it's a good story. Everybody likes it, it's cool that this team who's not perennially in this conversation is in the mix, but you got to kind of take that out, You're right. I mean, Gonzaga, who knows, man? If you put Gonzaga and South Carolina on the field, maybe Gonzaga takes 2 of 3 or sweeps. Who knows? We don't, but in some regard, you're taking a look at overall resumes doing this and trying to project a little bit. You may or may not get it right. You know, you can't really tell until maybe you got the benefit of hindsight. You pick some team to host a regional and they get drubbed and knocked out of their own home regional. Maybe that'll happen, you know, but no, that to answer your question, no. I mean, there's, yeah, what has Gonzaga done that is that much more impressive than South Carolina? I don't see it.
Well, look at the quad 1 plus quad 2 record. Gonzaga has South Carolina has more W's in that category than Gonzaga has even played in that category.
Right.
So I don't know, man. It's obviously and you know, there's going to be a lot of different metrics that go into this. But God, you got to. To me, if South Carolina can just go and not, you got to just win this first game first and foremost and get yourself into the double. It's a convoluted bracket. First games, unless you have a bye at the SEC tournament, are single elim. But if you get to that, it becomes double elimination until you get towards the end, and then it becomes single elim again. But you know, if you're South Carolina, get into the double elim part. You've already done a lot. I tend to think, Chris, you know, I think you can probably – I think Florida's probably in. Florida probably gets the benefit of the doubt. 17-13 in SEC play. They're Florida. They've won 35 overall games. You know, you could probably put them on the in category. You can definitely take Pitt out. You know, are you going to take – is Louisiana Tech in? Is Southern Miss in? I would tend to think for South Carolina, it's going to come down – to them or one of these other regional lesser conference teams that have had really good years. You know, you look at an ECU, they've won 38 games. Charlotte has won 39 games. They have a good RPI as well. They've actually won those two teams have won some quad 1 and quad 2 games. You know, Charlotte has 18 wins. ECU has 25 wins, you know, in quad 1 and 2. So strength of schedule isn't quite there, but they've beaten some good teams. I tend to think, look at those 3 teams, and South Carolina is either going to one of those places or hosting, you know, one of those teams, because they tend to do have a regional effect, a regional factor in these things. And we've seen South Carolina host ECU, and we've seen South Carolina go to ECU at times in the not so distant past. So I tend to think whichever one doesn't get it will be going to the other, just sort of looking at those 3 teams, man.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, you know, you look at – it seems, you know, just looking at paper resume, which is what we're doing here, it seems like Charlotte and East Carolina have better resumes than Southern Miss, Louisiana Tech, and Gonzaga. You know, it to me is what – and Pittsburgh for sure. I mean, Pittsburgh, of course, is the least impressive of all those. So, yeah, going to be really interesting. And I don't know. I guess you know, it's a positive for South Carolina that we're sitting here still talking about the possibility. That's, you know, that's a good thing for them. But you probably feel a lot better about it with, you know, had they been able to close that thing out on Saturday in Game 3.
No doubt. Hey, J-Dub says we got a great intro, Chris. So,
nice. I'm glad we were able to debut that today. It worked. We will see. I have not received – have you gotten a notification? I think we're okay on the copyright situation.
Yeah, although, dude, I got to say, I think I don't know about the rooster crow we used.
Really? Okay. I thought that would be a little bit controversial, but I had my reasons for that particular one.
Oh, okay.
One of them being copyright issues.
Okay.
What are your thoughts? We need a different.
I feel like we got to find an old rooster crow from the games, like maybe implement the crowd going wild with the rooster crow potentially.
If we can find a way to loop that in, I'm all for it. And I think we can make that change, and then we can roll out version
460,
3.0, 4.0, 3.2, whatever it may be.
Unless there's some copyright to crowd noise that we don't.
Probably.
There could be.
Yeah.
It's actually it's crazy how good YouTube is at finding audio that's matched.
Well, here's what we'll have to do. So,
which is actually a good thing, I'll say. We don't want to steal somebody's work.
For sure. Oh, no, we would never want to do that. I mean, literally, we try to take care. That's why we thought the first one was totally fine, and it evidently was not, and that was my mistake. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the football game this year with the full capacity crowd at Williams-Brice this time, and we will just record ourselves, the Rooster Crow and crowd noise. Well, you can take your nice microphone there and hook it up to your computer and capture the noise, and then we will bring it onto the show. Be a very organic way to do it.
I thought you meant for about a half second, I thought you meant we were going to record ourselves doing a Rooster Crow.
No, you can do that. I will not.
Okay. You settled that very quickly. You're like not even considering.
No, I'm not considering that at all.
We got a question here. By the way, speaking of crowds, dude, if what we saw the PGA Championship over the weekend is any indication, you people are excited for some sports in person because and I don't watch golf at all, like at all. Because the times I've played, it's just all it does is make me mad. Get so mad because I didn't play growing up. So I get out there, coaching community, football, sports community, people play a lot and they, hey, come on, play a round of golf. So I try to get into it. All it does is make me mad. But dude, that crowd was awesome. It made me turn. For one, I wanted to see if Phil could hold on and get it done. But dude, that was awesome. That was crazy.
That was, and even though Founders was not like packed out, right? Listen to it. I mean, it was loud. So I think anybody who's actually at any sporting event right now is like they're on 10. Like they're like ready to go. I mean, yeah, and you know what? I mean, the Braves, Wes, you've been there. You've been back since. Different.
Yeah, I was at Founders on Saturday too. It was.
Yeah, and I mean,
it was good.
Carolina Panthers announced today that they're full capacity. Maybe we'll go catch one of those this season. Yes. I might be on 10 at the Panthers game because I'm ready for some in-person sporting events too. So let's go.
Well, even y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Even last year, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was so thankful that we actually did get sports. But even then, you're like, I'm glad we're having this. Just does not feel the same at all. Even these Major League Baseball games, even the ones that are still at like 50% capacity, the difference in that and an empty stadium is unquantifiable. Is that a real word? I don't know.
I think it is, actually.
But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, last year counted. There's not an asterisk if you won last year. But it's going to feel so real when people get back out tailgating with their buddies, seeing their friends, and probably a little bit more of an appreciation. Because, dude, we went to obviously some of the games last year. It just did not feel the same at all. Now, part of it is, like the Texas A&M game when South Carolina is getting hammered right off the bat. There's not going to be an atmosphere anyway. But just, what was missing? That buzz.
Yeah.
Right before. And it's kind of hard to even put it, but you know what I'm talking about, that little like hum, that murmur just of people being excited for a big SEC matchup.
Yeah.
That was not there. You know what? We like to think, I hate traffic, right? I hate driving in game day traffic. But dude, last year, there was no traffic coming in or out. You're just rolling right into your parking spot. You may think that's awesome, but it's not. Because you don't get the feeling I'm having to wait a second because I'm going to something important. I'm going to something that other people are excited about. So it's a mental thing, in my opinion, that you have to wait in line to give your ticket to the person. You have to wait in line to get your tailgating spot because everybody else here is here for the same thing. That's to go be entertained by sports. So I think we missed the sports part, but I think we almost missed the atmosphere surrounding the sports as much as the actual sports on the field or court.
Yeah, and it was now last year for South Carolina, obviously nobody was happy with the results, but even at different portions or maybe something was going well in the game or whatnot, people would ask me, because a lot of people I know didn't go to any games last year. I went to several at Williams-Brice, and they would always ask what it was like, and the best I could come up with was like it was kind of like the fourth quarter in a game that South Carolina was either losing big in or winning big in, and everybody's just kind of there, and it's not a big crowd, like people have cleared out, and you're kind of like, that's what it was like, but from the kickoff, so it was really a weird, very, very weird experience. And so it honestly might take a little bit of getting used to get back to that, just because we've been so conditioned the other direction for a while, but it'll definitely be welcome.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, Rebecca, I don't know if you're still on here. 237. I'm guessing you probably won't be, but Rebecca wanted to know if we could recommend a website to teach an old lady, her words, not mine, old lady Gamecock fan from way back, some of the analytics, ins and outs of the game. I want to be able to talk football with my son-in-law and enjoy the game, make him think I really understand. That is a noble cause, Rebecca. Appreciate that. Appreciate the efforts. Do you have an answer for her, Chris?
I don't think I have a great answer.
I would go on Amazon, honestly. Maybe I'm sure there's like a football for dummies, like a football basics. I would go the book route first, and then I would just search football X's and O's basics. Football 101. Search for that. You'll probably find it. The great thing about football, and I'll say this for baseball too, the more you learn about football, the more you learn how much you don't know about football. It's like it's so multi-layered that it's like, okay, you learn all about the first layer of the game. Then you realize there's this whole other layer beneath that. And once you break through that layer, you start seeing all this other stuff you need to learn. So then you can go your whole life, and I would say never completely know everything about the game. But that I would start with something like that. Just search for football 101, football X's and O's beginners or something like that, and go from there. One of my favorite blogs, I don't even know if he puts out new content anymore, was Smart Football. But that's probably, if you're saying you're trying to learn basics, that's probably a little bit further down the road for you, I think. But that guy did or does a great job. I think his name's Chris Brown. He actually wrote a couple books on football. He's learned so much from that because he dives into the X's and O's. Tell you what, our buddy, we've had him on our show, the SEC Stat Cat. If you go to secstatcat.com, does a great job with some deeper analytics on SEC football programs. We'll have to have him on, during the season at some point. But I don't know if that helps you, Rebecca. Okay, there she is. She is still on. She says, I'm past the 101. I want the next layer. Like, what is the nickel in the box? Stuff like that. Okay. Tell you what, Rebecca, if you I will effort this. If you hopefully hop on the show at a later point, I will try to have a better answer for you. I'll answer those questions for you, though. A nickel defense, by the way, not a nickel offense. Nickel defense is when there are 5 defensive backs on the field. So nickel would be referring to a personnel package. So if a lot of times in the past, you'll hear like a base defense would be 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 4 defensive backs. So then when you take one of those linebackers off the field and bring in another defensive back, which you would then call the nickel back, that would be a nickel defensive personnel because you now have 5 DBs, 2 linebackers, and 4 defensive linemen. If you take another linebacker off and throw another DB out there, that's called a dime defensive personnel. So it's just a way of essentially tagging which type of how many of each position is on the field. So in the box is basically the box is that little area where the defensive linemen and the linebackers are on defense on any given play. So if you say they're bringing their safety up into the box, that means that safety, who's normally back deep, has walked his way up into the box to help against run support, to give you an extra guy to stop the run, basically. So is that a good explanation, Chris?
That was a good explanation. Sorry, I had to move my mouse because I didn't want to start. I succeeded in not having myself muted when I started talking there. No, that was a good explanation. And I was also going to suggest, one thing that I've taken a look at in the past. Now it's a little bit more in depth at times. There are different levels. You can go way into the weeds. You can go a little bit back. But if you don't mind even spending some money on some stuff, Championship Productions is a company. If you Google that, or I think it's championshipproductions.com or .net, they have a lot of resources that you can check out, whether it's clinics and things like that, or even if you just go on YouTube, you can go on YouTube, and if you just search for like football coaching clinic or football X's and O's, you can find stuff on a variety of topics there, and I'll just check out some of those resources.
Yeah, no doubt. Rebecca has me writing a book now. It's good money if you can get it, man. One of our good friends, Andrew Bone, who does recruiting for Alabama, for Alabama rival site, he wrote a book, and maybe he's writing another one. I can't remember what he said. He wrote a book on Alabama recruiting, just tales from the trail or something like that. I think he's doing pretty well. So maybe a Gamecock Central book could be in the future, Chris.
Here you go.
You got anything else, man?
Nope, I don't.
All right, Rebecca, we appreciate you. Everybody else, we appreciate you as well. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for hanging out. And we'll be back. Well, Chris will be back on Wednesday. By the way, slight tease, we're working on a very special guest that we're hoping to have at some point soon. I don't know if we should tease that quite yet, give you a name yet, but just be prepared. We're going to have a really good guest, I'm hoping, here shortly.
Yep.
And, dude, if that one happens while I'm on vacation, I might have to log in from the beach. So
that'd be fun.
Otherwise, appreciate everybody. And otherwise, I'll be back on Monday. Chris will be back hopefully at some point on here to chat with y'all. And we'll see y'all soon. Appreciate y'all. Have a good one.